Welcome to Learn Medical Spanish. Today I'm going to talk about some words and phrases you can use to clarify symptoms. So if your patient comes in with whatever and you want to kind of quantify it or localize it or what have you, then this may come in handy. So I'll say the phrases in English first, and then I'll give you a chance to think about the translation for a moment, and then I'll say it a couple times in Spanish so you can hear it a couple times and repeat it out loud after me each time. All right, so here's the first phrase. How much? ¿Cuánto? ¿Cuánto? How many? And this is very similar to the other one. How many? ¿Cuántos? ¿Cuántos? So as you probably noticed, the only difference between those was the S at the end of the word. And so that's because it's basically the same word, but you're just saying how much of kind of a singular thing versus like how many of a plural thing. And then as you'll see moving forward, that word also has to match the gender of the word that it's describing. So we'll see several examples of that moving forward. The next phrase is how many times? ¿Cuántas veces? ¿Cuántas veces? So that's an example where it's matching the number, because it's plural, like veces, and the gender, because it's feminine. So if you think of una vez, that means one time, so you can tell it's feminine. And then if you make it plural, it's veces, and then cuántas veces matches the number and the gender. Okay, so now we're going to add on to that. We're going to say how many times per day, per week, per month. And so how do you say per day, or how many times per day? Al día, or cuántas veces al día. ¿Cuántas veces al día? Per week. A la semana. A la semana. So the difference there is that if it's masculine and it's a él, that becomes al. So it's like a contraction where you put a and el together. But if it's feminine and it's a la, then it's not a contraction. You just keep the two words separate, like a la semana. Next one is per month. Al mes. Al mes. How often? Cada cuánto. Cada cuánto. So even though that phrase is a little funny if you try to translate it literally, you probably noticed it's that same word we learned earlier. Cuánto is part of that phrase. So that it can mean how much by itself, but if you say cada cuánto, it means how often. A lot. You should probably remember this from middle school, if nothing else. How do you say a lot? Mucho. Mucho. A little. Un poco. Un poco. Or just poco in some cases, especially if you're saying the word poco and then something else that follows that, like poco dinero, a little bit of money. Who? ¿Quién? ¿Quién? What? ¿Qué? ¿Qué? And of course that can start a sentence like you were saying, what material did you cut yourself with? Or, all these different things that you might want to clarify. The next one is where exactly? ¿Dónde exactamente? ¿Dónde exactamente? That one's pretty useful for things like abdominal pain or chest pain, and you want to see exactly where the pain is located. Next phrase or word is when. ¿Cuándo? ¿Cuándo? In the morning? Por la mañana? Por la mañana? At night? En la noche? En la noche? And in case you were wondering, you could have used the same word to start each of those phrases. You could have said por la noche and por la mañana, or en la noche and en la mañana. It's kind of just dealer's choice. So it's what I felt was natural at the time, but you could use either one really. And now we're going to say for how many seconds, minutes, hours, but let's just start with for how many. ¿Por cuántos? ¿Por cuántos? And then if you're looking at the text, you'll notice it says cuántos or cuántas. So as I explained earlier, it's got to match the gender of whatever comes next. So seconds, minutes, hours. So seconds and minutes are masculine, but hours is feminine. So once we get to hours, you would use cuántas horas. So let's run through those real quick. Seconds. Segundos. Segundos. Minutes. Minutos. Minutos. Hours. Horas. Horas. And again, you could say por cuántos minutos, for how many minutes, or por cuántas horas, for how many hours. So you change the form of that word how many depending on what comes next. And here's some other examples. We're going to go through days, weeks, months, and years. So start with days. Días. Días. Quick note, día sounds like it should be feminine, but it's actually masculine. So it's just one of those exceptions that you kind of got to memorize. So it'd be cuántos días. Weeks. Semanas. Semanas. Or cuántas semanas, por cuántas semanas. Months. Meses. Meses. Years. Años. Años. Soon. Pronto. Pronto. Now. Ahora. Ahora. Right now. Ahorita. Ahorita. Today. Hoy. Hoy. Couple quick notes about those. So right now you can say ahorita, or you could say en este momento, like in this moment is another decent way. And then the word ahora technically means now, but in real life it's often used to mean today, to just refer to the current day. So just realize that ahora can kind of refer to a bigger swath of time as opposed to the current moment. So that's why if you're going to say right now, you wouldn't necessarily say ahora. Here. Aquí. Aquí. There. Allí. Allí. Better. Mejor. Mejor. Worse. Peor. Peor. And here's a couple of phrases you might say or the patient might say at some point in the conversation that are just useful to know. So the first one is, I don't know. No sé. No sé. I'm not sure. No estoy seguro. No estoy seguro. I don't understand. No entiendo. No entiendo. Okay, so hopefully those words and phrases will be helpful for you. And obviously it doesn't cover every situation, but I think if you kind of look back through those or review it or whatever, you can find a lot of different situations where those phrases would be useful. And if you're on YouTube, check out a playlist for ER providers and some of my other videos, and then also a video that explains more about my CME course as well. And if you're on the podcast, you can just kind of scroll down and look at all the other topics that I've covered, and hopefully you'll find something interesting. So thanks for listening or watching, and I'll see you next time on Learn Medical Spanish.